Hello, everyone, and welcome to UBS Trending. I'm Anthony Pastore. Thanks for joining us. Today is day 3 of our Sustainable Investing Focus Week. It's an immersive educational experience designed to help you learn more about how best to incorporate sustainable investing into your overall wealth plan. Investing and philanthropy, which is the focus of our topic today, they are both inspired by what the investor cares about, how they want to influence the world that they live in, and the legacy that they want to leave for their own family and, of course, the world at large. Today, we're going to discuss that, what we're calling the new continuum, aligning interests, investments, and impact with my guests Amantia Muhedini and Nicole Sebastian. So nice to have you both joining me in the studio. Very important topic, and certainly one that we're going to get really into here today. Amantia, by the way, Nicole, welcome for the first time to the studio.
Thank you.
Our audience is probably very familiar with Amantia, who's done lots and lots of shows with us talking about sustainable investing and impact investing. But Amantia, we've spent the week so far kind of talking about what inspires investors, and specifically opportunities related to sustainability for the most part, and how sustainable investing needs to be placed in the portfolio context first and foremost. So that's the most important thing. But we have many clients who engage in philanthropy, and they want to explicitly use some of those assets to make a positive change in the world, which is something that you and I have talked about in past shows. So you address this continuum, which I said right at the top. What do you mean by that?
Sure, and firstly, thanks for having me back, Anthony. I'd say you're exactly right. When we've talked about sustainable investing, we've really focused on the investing part of that set of words, right? We focused about why investors are looking for opportunities that relate to their portfolios and that they can find in sustainable investing. However, another thing that we've noticed among our clients is that many of them may not be considering sustainable investing for their portfolios, but they have very strong philanthropic objectives, and Nicole can speak to that. They really are impact focused, and they're looking to make a positive change in the world through philanthropy. So this is interesting to us, and it's not unique to the conversations that we're having. We found that historically there's been almost a separation between what happens in your portfolio and what you do with the capital that you're willing to dedicate to philanthropy. But what we're seeing is a beginning of a convergence of the motivations of those clients that are impact focused. They can find ways, we find, to connect their focus on impact as well as their investments. And in this way, they can align all of their pools of capital on this continuum of impact. That's what we're calling here the new continuum. And it goes from, type of strategies and approaches across both investing and philanthropy that can be connected to different objectives. Now, we use the word continuum. It's a helpful heuristic. It's a helpful way of thinking about things, but it really isn't something linear. This is a process, and we think all of these approaches can actually be used in a basket together. Sort of think of diversification in investing. We think of diversification of different instruments. Why is this important? Well, think of the global challenges that many of us want to address. So ranging from climate change or loss of biodiversity or homelessness or, poor quality education and advancing that. All of these challenges are very complex. We need all pools of capital that are available, and we need to use all possible strategies and approaches, which is why thinking of this continuum makes sense for clients and investors.
Right. Initially you would think about sustainable investing and philanthropy as two very different parts of what families believe are important to them. But as you just described it, Amantia, they really do work together in a really important way. So Nicole, let me welcome you here again. And as Amantia is talking about here, talking about driving change at the system level. So let's bring in the idea of philanthropy here. What are the different approaches on this impact continuum that Amantia so richly just described for us?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you again for the opportunity to join this conversation. And as Amantia mentioned, it's important to reiterate that we are beginning to see a convergence regarding impact as it relates to deploying capital, whether philanthropic or otherwise. And the convergence is inspired by interests, by investment, and by impact. In other words, by what the investor cares about, by how they want to influence the world that they live in, and the legacy that they want to live and leave for their family as well as for the world at large. So on the philanthropic side specifically, we identify 3 tracks along the continuum. And it's important to emphasize that these tracks are not mutually exclusive. And in fact, we often see a diversified approach that includes more than one. So getting started, we have what is called checkbook philanthropy, which is the practice of making cash donations to nonprofit organizations. And donations in this category are often responsive or more of a reactive nature, and what is missing is an active inquiry around affecting change. So moving along the continuum, we get to what we call strategic philanthropy. And instead of being responsive, this is a version of philanthropy that is purpose-driven and solutions-oriented. And it starts to emphasize the importance of performance measurement. It also seeks to find and prove effective solutions that can then be replicated or scaled. And then ultimately we arrive at the most sophisticated end of the continuum, which is called social finance. And this is a newer impact-inspired category where private capital is being introduced into the equation to address some of the larger social or environmental issues. And this requires substantially larger sums of funding, and it activates innovative financing vehicles that include pay-for-performance models and involves a lot of different parties across public-private partnerships.
Yeah, it's a lot to consider and to digest here. So maybe if you wouldn't mind, give us an example of some of these, because we had flashed the chart up on the screen, which is really helpful, but give us a real-world example.
Sure, happy to. I'll walk us through an example that takes us from outputs to outcomes, and then ultimately arriving at how you achieve impact. So let's take the very broad category of education and highlight one particular narrative. So let's say you have a donor who is interested in improving literacy. The act of donating books to a library won't yield those results, won't improve literacy as an isolated event. But counting the number of books that somebody donates to a library is in itself considered an output. But how are the books being incorporated into the lessons? Are the teachers being trained to incorporate those books into their lesson plans? And perhaps most importantly, are those books relevant, and are they age and culturally appropriate? Without these questions being asked, this example would actually fall into the category of checkbook philanthropy, which we already talked about. Instead, it's more strategic to focus on improving children's literacy and numeracy by enhancing curriculum and improving teacher training. This also involves conducting a baseline test to measure current levels of literacy and then measuring improvements over an agreed upon period of time. So this strategy actually focuses on what we call outcomes and falls into the category of strategic philanthropy. We actually did this via the UBS Optimist Foundation with a nonprofit organization called Educate Girls. And the program we funded supported getting 7,000 girls into school in Rajasthan, India, keeping them in school, and then improving their academic performance over the course of about 3 years. And these students dramatically outperformed their peers in government schools that didn't actually have that intervention in place. So after the 3-year program and the proof of concept, it was then expanded to target an additional 300,000 children. So this is an example of seeking impact by significantly scaling what is already proven to be a successful program. And it also falls squarely into the social finance category because the funding was structured as a pay-for-performance development impact bond.
By the way, let me just say that, and I've worked with you, Nicole, for a number of years, and between what the UBS Optimist Foundation did and what Educate Girls did together, nothing short of a miracle. So it's amazing what you can accomplish when you put your mind to it and you actually have that passion to drive it. Which actually, it really thinks, when you think about it, what you just described is really about thoughtfulness, right? You don't want to just donate any old book to the library, for example. Think about who you're trying to help with getting those books donated or wherever they're going to end up.
That's right.
Thank you, Nicole. So Amantia, let's talk about the other side of the spectrum here. So from the investment side, what role can investments then play, kind of piggybacking off of what Nicole was talking about?
Sure, great question. I mean, what a great example with education as well, Nicole. So let's keep it to investing. Firstly, I'd say if we look at that impact continuum that we also showed on the screen, on the top side of the continuum, on the investment side, we see 2 types of strategies: sustainability-focused strategies and impact investing. So think of those as 2 points, but again, just like with philanthropy, those are not mutually exclusive. If you're trying to address a global challenge, you probably want to employ everything that you have available to right? So all of the possible tools. So that's one thing to consider. I think I'd say also that really the main distinction that we're drawing here between the philanthropy through line and the investing one is that of expected financial return. So both impact and sustainability focused strategies aim to contribute or drive the similar change, but the objective there is specifically to also look for market level return. Now, why am I emphasizing this? Well, let's take this example of education. If that is your objective and something you care about, once you've thought of the philanthropic strategies you can employ, is there a role for investing? We think the answer is probably yes, and there's a couple of questions that you need to consider to bring this to life. So firstly, you need to consider what's the nature of the problem that you're trying to solve for here. If it's education, what are the core reasons that are producing this problem? Secondly, you need to think about what are some of the types of solutions, and is there a role for markets on sort of the far end of scalability that can help to address these challenges around education. And then third, very important, since we're talking about investing, you have to consider what are my investment objectives and how are the strategies that I'm putting together, how do they fit in my traditional investment portfolio so it can come also in service of this broader objective. So with education, well, you could say, philanthropy is very good for the fundamental kind of challenges, but maybe there's a role here for kind of using technology to scale delivering high-quality education or high-quality training to teachers in different areas of the world. So in that case, you could consider an impact investing strategy that is finding those companies that are moving in this kind of scalable manner and are self-sustaining from an economic sense, so they're looking for competitive returns. Or you can look at sustainability-focused strategies, which give you really exposure to publicly listed companies that help maybe to provide online education services, and they're expanding a lot of this content. So you're moving here, you're building all of the different pieces of the puzzle that is improving education outcomes in a community or globally.
Right. Just when we think everybody's understanding what sustainable investing is, we even add more information onto it. But it's clearly important to have this conversation. And I'm so glad, Nicole, that you're joining us to talk about how important philanthropy is to an overall sustainable investing portfolio and things that matter to clients and investors. So let me then wrap it up with you. Yeah. As an investor, how can one actually put this into practice for themselves?
I'm so glad you asked that question, because we believe that there are 3 steps that can get anybody started, either with inquiry or if they're already ready to take action. The first is to identify and articulate your preferences and your objectives, as Amantia said. The second is understand your options, both in investing as well as in philanthropy. And they're not mutually exclusive, as we hope that we've stated. And third, develop a plan to deploy that capital. And if I can actually add a fourth here, you don't have to do it alone. There are experts and practitioners who are steeped in this work and can help educate and empower you as you embark on this new continuum.
Right, including our financial advisors here at UBS, who, by the way, have incredible resources in the 2 individuals sitting in front of me, by the way, as I speak to camera, Amantia and Nicole. So, by the way, thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for all the work that you're doing with Optimus and our philanthropy team here at UBS. Nicole, great to see you. Nicole Sebastian, and of course, our very frequent guest here on UBS Trending, because sustainable investing is such a broad topic. Amantia Muhadini. Thank you both for being here. Good to see you.
Thank you, Anthony.
Thank you.
Great. And for more information and access to all of the content from UBS, you can start by visiting our website, ubs.com/views. And also make sure to follow us on social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all places you can get various content from our folks like Nicole and Amantia. Plus, check out all of our past UBS Trending episodes on demand on the website and on the UBS YouTube channel. And as always, as I mentioned, make sure to talk to your financial advisor if you have any questions about how this particular topic might impact your own portfolio. And until next time, I'm Anthony Pastore. Have a great day. More content coming up for SI Week, so make sure to tune in for that. Remember to keep your eyes on what's trending, everybody. We'll see you soon.